Well, we're back. The Boks won by 18 points at Loftus Versfeld, but not maybe a win that Rossi was very happy with. He looked very frustrated afterwards. With me again, as normal, is my colleague Gavin Rich and Nick Mallett, all the way from France. Nick, welcome. Gav, welcome. I suppose to start off saying that 18-point win in a test match should never be sort of laughed at, but certainly with the Boks own standards, they wouldn't have been happy, especially with that second half.
Yeah, should I kick off, Gav? I think it was a classic situation where the Boks got themselves into a really good position at 28 points to 3. I don't think they could have. I mean, there was they were very direct in that first half. But if you look at the stats, I mean, it was quite extraordinary. 70% possession, 60% or territory. I think 60% possession, 70% territory. You had, I think, Italy only threw one line out in that whole first half, dominated the scrums. We were completely on top of them, and they didn't look threatening at all, except in how well they defended. But we still got 4 tries on the board, and I thought that first half went really well. What was, obviously we can talk about this in more detail, but the second half was very disappointing from everyone's point of view, from the guys who came on the field. Really, also there were some reffing issues that need to be looked at, and our defense as well. The physicality of our defense just disappeared in that second half. So quite a few questions about the guys coming onto the field and their lack of impact, as opposed to the fact that the bomb squad is supposed to lift the game and increase the intensity. This didn't happen at all on Saturday.
Yeah, the commentators made quite a bit of the fact that there were fireworks for the first time as the bomb squad came onto the field. And I thought it was quite apt in a way, because they were the only fireworks at the time. I mean, the fireworks exploded in the sky, and not much happened on the field. In that first half, look, I mean, I think you have to give credit to Italy. In the first half, we all thought that they were going to sort of like run out of steam, and that they weren't going to be able to keep up that line speed. They weren't going to be able to keep up there. They were just a complete pain in the butt at the breakdown. We didn't clean out well, and on another day, I mean, Italy might have gone away, and South Africa would have gone 28-3 up, and they would have disappeared, but they didn't in that game, and that's why I sort of feel that there must be some sort of credit for them, because they were brilliant the way they carried on, and they nearly scored a try right at the end as well. I mean, that second half. The first half an hour of the second half, they scored 21 points to 7. And then there was the Marco van Staden try. Eventually, it was 21-14. But if they'd been awarded that last try, it would have been 28-14. And it wouldn't have been any less than they deserved. I mean, they were very good. And as you say, Nick, I was a bit concerned about our defence in that second half.
Yeah, the real disappointment was the first half was built on a really solid forward performance. We scrummed really well. We were direct. We got across the advantage line, and we forced them into making a lot of tackles. They did. They were brave. But the second half, it should have been repeat. But unfortunately, we went sideways. We went backwards. Our scrum didn't win any penalties. Our lineout was dysfunctional. We threw in badly, or else the calls were very poor. The referee allowed them to really slow down our ball and counter ruck, which they did very effectively. They flooded the breakdown on numbers of occasions. But that's what I'm talking about. It proves once again that if your pack of forwards don't get on top and don't dominate, we're not as good as we like to think we are. I think our backline cannot really operate under ball going backwards or sideways, and that was a real issue. When you think of the guys coming on, Bongi Manambi, Koch, Wessels, and Jan-Henrik Wessels, and the experienced block. You had obviously Mostert and Ergies Snyman. Those 5 guys didn't cover themselves in glory, unfortunately. Bongi didn't look like an impact player. He looks like a guy who needs to start, and then maybe someone like Mark brings on more energy. We weren't getting that forward dominance that we normally get with the bomb squad, when guys like, say, when we started with Frans Malherbe and Kitsoff, and then we used to get Ogden Shea off with Malcolm Mark and Trevor Nyakani, for example, we used to get a lot of explosivity there with Ox and and Malcolm. You know, go back to the World Cup and that quarterfinal when we won the penalty, when Rusty took all the major guys off and put a whole new pack on, and we really upped the tempo there. And this didn't happen. So I think what happened, you know, what's quite difficult for them is that there's a lot of competition in the squad, and you know, guys are going to get a few crosses against their name after this performance.
Yeah, I was going to say, in that first half, I mean, Italy made 128 tackles. Normally, I think Rusty said it afterwards as well. Normally, when you get a team under that sort of pressure, they fall away in the second half, and they didn't. The other thing that was quite interesting is Rusty made a comment afterwards saying that some of the first choice guys may be second choice guys now. And I think that certainly from the bomb squad's point of view, as you said, there's a lot of impact, a lot of competition in the squad at the moment. And I think we're going to probably see over the next couple of weeks, or maybe not directly now, because I don't think they'll throw anybody away. But there's certainly going to be a bit of a fire lit under some backsides there, I think, this week, especially in that review.
I don't think that the flower half is necessarily the issue when it comes to who's going to be first or second. I mean, that's not what I'm about to say. But in that first half, although we had all that dominance, we took a while to sort of, and there was wave after wave of attack. I just sort of felt that maybe there was a lack of that sort of point of, I think Robbie Deans referred to it as point of difference. He said South Africa have players who have that point of difference. And I just sort of feel that maybe when we don't have a Sasha or a Mani at flower half, we're a little bit more predictable than we are on other. I don't know what you guys think, but that was just my perception on Saturday.
Pollard is definitely the sort of player who plays better under a structured game plan, which would be territory. You know, the 2019 game plan we had, he was absolutely perfect for it. And of course, he's got ice in his veins when he comes on, knocks kicks over. He puts a lot of calmness into our play. But I'm not sure yet that he gets the backline away as well as Mani or Sasha. And the reason for this is, you know, he's got two ways of playing. Either he takes it at pace to the line and then he doesn't make a pass. He'll then show and go. And he's quite physical, you know, then he's a bit sort of Honeyball-esque, you know, when he takes it nice and flat like that. Or else he'll take it a little bit deeper and pass without running onto the ball. He just stands and passes. And when you do that, you don't give momentum to your backline. You've got to be a threat yourself, but you've got to have the ability to pass both ways, left and right. But in movement, you know, moving forward, being a threat yourself, and it doesn't have to be at 100 miles an hour. You've just got to take it to the line before you pass. And it's that little balance I don't think that he's got quite right at the moment. But to give him you know, to think the second half wasn't his fault. No backline can perform under the type of ball that we were giving our backs in that second half. You know, it really was a poor forward performance by the Boks. You know, just the humiliation of getting a 20-meter driving ball try against us. You know, that's just not on. You know, it's not the South African way to concede a 20-meter. Rather collapse the maul and give a penalty away and a yellow card. But you just don't fold like that. So there were lots of question marks in that second half. The fly-off is quite a difficult position, Gav, because with the slightly flashier, sort of quick hands play of a Sasha or a Mani, it does improve the backline play, but you get a higher error rate as well. So we'll see on Saturday. It'll be quite interesting to see how it goes.
Nick, about 9 years ago, it was 9 years ago now. It was Alistair Coetzee first game as coach. I got a lot of flack because it was that game where they lost to Ireland. You remember it was the game where
Yes.
Patrick Lambie got injured. It was also Faf's debut. And I was quite critical of Faf. And I got a lot of flack from Supersport readers who said, but Nick Mallett said he was brilliant. Like, why do you say he was brilliant? So I'm going to concede that you probably know more about scrum half play. I thought that Mornay was actually really good against the Barbarians. Not
Yeah.
quite as good in this last game, but that was also because he was getting slow ball in that. But maybe just your take, because it's quite interesting what's happening at scrum half at the moment, and I think that he's a really good player. In fact, when I knew the Stormers were looking for someone, I mean, I thought that they should have gone for Morné van den Berg if they could, rather than, for instance, Kobus Reinach. What is your take on Morné and in fact the pecking order of the scrum halves at the moment?
Yeah, I think he's really stepped up. He has looked a very good player in quite a weak Lions team, and that's hard to do. It's hard to come out of a game with credit when your side is losing on a regular basis. So the 2 games he's played, what I really like about him is he's got an ability to do a sort of semi-circular break. He picks the ball up and goes on a little a Dupont style 2 yards round the corner, as though he's going to take on the first and second defender. And then he'll play up either the first runner, the second runner. He could probably play back inside to a blindside winger as well. It's a really nice asset to have as a 9, to be able to take on the first and second defender without necessarily taking contact, but you take them out of the defensive system. And he's very good at that. I mean, he's also quick on the break. If there is a half gap, as we saw on Saturday, he took that. So he can play the running game well. And I thought his passing was good. I thought his kicking was better than it was, than it has been. I thought he was more accurate with his kicking. And when people have a full go at the 9 for kicking, they must understand that it is the structure, that is the part of the structure that the Springboks and most teams, in fact, and you'll see that sides that do well, like New Zealand and France in particular, kick an awful amount. They kick probably as more or as much, if not more, than we do. And the reason for it is that you can't attack off ball that hasn't got momentum. If you're not going forward, if you're not what people like to say now is on top of the defense, there are more attackers than there are defenders, and you're winning quick ball on the front foot. That must go to the backs, that ball. But any ball where the defense is on top of you and you've won a poor line out or you've gone back, there's been a physical tackle, you've been driven back, it's slow ball. There's no point in trying to run that. You've got to then transfer the pressure by putting a box kick up or one of those high kicks across to the open side winger. But you've got to transfer pressure through the kicking game. And I think he does that well. So a little less criticism of our 9s when they kick. It's basically what they're being told to do. And it's just the accuracy of the kick that is important. And then obviously the chase. And I think we do well at that. So to your question, I think he's done really well in these last 2 games. And it'll be interesting to see how Reinach, because it looks like he might get a run this weekend, how he goes. And if it's Feinberg, if it's Sasha playing with Reinach, that might be the Stormers 9-10 going forward. So it'll be quite an interesting observation to see whether they click and how well they go this weekend.
When I mentioned that 2016 game and my criticism of Faf and the people's criticism of me, what I recall was actually that in that game I felt that in those days Faf never really had a kicking game, whereas he's got a really good kicking game now. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I would. And also the other thing, Gav, it's very difficult to be a left-footed scrum half. You're turning back into, when you put in the scrum, you put it in on the left-hand side, obviously. So it's much easier to be able to protect yourself from the number 9 and then swing onto your right foot and kick with your right foot. So the scrum halves who are right-footed but can kick with their left foot are usually better kickers than the ones who are left-footed but can kick with their right foot. So he always has to sort of manipulate a loose ruck to get himself back onto his left-hand side to put the left foot kick in. Faf, I'm talking about now. And I remember Joost van der Westhuizen was very similar. Joost wasn't, he was left-footed. So when he was on his wrong foot, he often used to break, and he was devastating on the break on that side. So probably people would have preferred him to be able to kick. Whenever he was on his right foot, he didn't like kicking on his right foot, and that was when he would go. The scrum half situation is interesting. We've got obviously Reinach at 34, 35, a lot of experience, and Van der Berg at 27, up and coming. And then you've got Williams, of course, Grant Williams, who I thought did really well for the BOKS last year, and hopefully will get a look in as well.
Yeah, I was going
And
to say,
Loftus
looking
playing
ahead.
for the under 20 side is actually really good as well, just as an aside. Sorry, Brennan.
No, I was going to say, I mean, just looking ahead now at the games, the game this weekend. I mean, Rassie has sort of intimated that Kobus and Sasha will probably start, and then there's obviously returns for guys like Sia, Makazole, and Grant Williams. I take it they're probably going to put those guys on the bench, seeing as like most of them are coming back from injury. They did miss Sia a lot at the breakdowns. I thought that was the one thing. Marco van Staden did a lot of work there, but I did feel that also they missed Sia's presence there at the breakdowns a lot. So I expect him also to be back this week. Yeah, so
You go ahead, John.
I was going to say, Rassie also said there's 14 of the 23 been named internally already. So now the rest is just they've got to figure out who's the rest and who's on the bench and who's not. Do you see guys see any other changes?
Yeah. What I was going to say was that what they were missing was Sia's cleaning out. I mean, that's what they really missed.
That's what I meant.
That's what they really missed.
No, that's exactly right. I think we must. Sia's not. He can do it, but he's not instinctively a fetcher. He's much more a counter-rucker, and he's very good at that. You know, he's very good at counter-rucking, and he chooses his battles well. So in those wider channels, which he's used for the Springboks, you know, having a big, strong, loose forward out wide, you know, protecting the ball when Kirkley Orenser or Colby goes to ground is very, very valuable. I think there's just the whole question of how Rassie is going to handle the older guys and the younger guys coming through is going to work its way through this year. We're going to see the players themselves are going to play themselves either in or out of the team, depending on their performances. Which is why I said when you get an opportunity to come off the bench, Brendan and Gav, I don't think you can't have you know, you can't come on and have an ineffectual sort of lackadaisical weak performance that those guys had. It's going to affect them if they do that twice. You know, Rusty will move them down that list.
It is a natural thing, though, isn't it? I mean, like, you know, a lot of those guys have won 2 World Cups. It's hard to keep you know, when you've had a lot of success and you're getting older. I mean, Father Time waiteth for no man, as we all know. But you know, so it's not something that's necessarily sort of curable. And you sort of say, just let the guy just suddenly get more motivated. You know, you do get to that point. You get to a tipping point where suddenly, like, let's say you're a wing. Not that the wings are a problem, but let's say, I mean, where you know, you're a meter behind where you were a year ago when it comes to your pace. I mean, and that could happen. And the big concern for me at the weekend wasn't so much what happened at Loftus, but was earlier in the day. I don't know if you got a chance to do it. I know you're in France. I don't know if you watched the game, Nick, but watching France, a very young France team push New Zealand all the way in Dunedin. And they've got so much depth there. We've got a lot of depth because it's spread all over the place. But they've got so much depth coming through their domestic competition now at the moment. And, you know, if I look ahead at 2027, I mean, the All Blacks are always a threat, obviously. But, you know, the other real big threat, and I mean, like, you know, overarching threat almost to me is France.
There's no question. There's no question about that at all. I mean, to go over there with 8 or 9 starters from a Six Nations team, and to push the All Blacks all the way is an extraordinary effort. And there were some guys, I mean, you know, that they must have come out of the under-21s. They were guys I'd never heard of, and you know, I follow that the French the competition. So and obviously all the Six Nations games. So there were guys that I'd never heard of there, and they really performed well. And in the same way, you've got to say to the Italian guys who came on at halftime, their bomb squad. I mean, they played with a huge amount of intensity and passion. So what I'm saying, I agree with you that as you get older, perhaps you're a yard slower and maybe you don't have quite the same motivation because you won 2 World Cups. But if that's the case, you're on the bus out of here because you're not going to win the World Cup with that sort of attitude. We've got to have guys who are desperate to get into the team, desperate to perform every single Saturday. And we know that Rusty is very objective in the way he selects his side. It's on stats and stats alone. It's you as an open side flanker, what you're supposed to do. As a lock, what you're supposed to do. As a prop, what you're supposed to do. How many times you make positive, positive actions for our team as opposed to negative actions. and it's an objective assessment of a performance. And so if you come off after that second half as one of those bomb squad forwards, you would have been very disappointed. Maybe Kwagga put in a bit more effort than the other guys, but I wasn't impressed by the 5 type forwards who came onto the field.
Nick, I was going to ask you, I mean, you spoke about last week about the first game in Witbank when you coached Italy, how the Boks were a bit embarrassed and they came back and gave 50. Do you think it's going to be the same situation this week? I think there's going to be the Boks going to come out firing in PE.
Yeah, I think they will. I think they will, but I don't think that Italy is the same side that I had. We were still battling to get to terms with professionalism in Italy, and just trying to, at that stage, we were trying to become a bit more competitive playing against teams. This Italian side has beaten France. They've beaten Wales away, I think twice and once at home. They've run England close. They actually do believe that they deserve to be up there in the top 10 in the world. So their defense is not going to go away. I mean, the way in which they were very good on Saturday because they knew we were going to be direct. So, they defended reasonably tightly around the ruck and the breakdown, and then got off the line incredibly quickly. And yet they have the intelligence that if you pull it out the back, they press, but they also shift after the press. So I was very impressed with the way that they handled our attack. And that's not going to be any different this weekend. It's going to be a tough game for us, but I don't think this Italian side is going to come away thinking, geez, we did really well. Therefore, let's all get pissed this week and let's not bother about the one in Port Elizabeth.
Isn't that the way? Isn't that I always get that impression from Argentina actually.
Yeah.
They're good for one game. They'll beat New Zealand one week, and then they'll beat the Springboks one week, and then the following week it's not so much. But I think maybe the difference between Argentina and Italy at the moment is that I think obviously Argentina now know they can beat us. They can beat New Zealand. They can beat South Africa. I know Italy beat us on that horrible day in 2016 in Florence, but I don't think that they at that point yet where they've got that confidence that they can actually beat us. So it's so to some extent it's still almost a win. Or am I getting it wrong? And I know in your time, I think you told the Italian president or something, I think after you guys had lost narrowly to France in some game, and they were celebrating that, and you went and you said, we're never going to win anything if we carry on like this. Is that starting to change in Italy?
Yeah, it definitely is. And even sides like Benetton now pushing themselves up, trying to get into the top 8 of the URC. It's been very good for them, that the URC competition. They've used obviously the Zebra team as their development team, and Benetton as their sort of pride, their top side, which they would hope would get into the top 8, and they nearly did this year. I just think that that with this Italian side, there was a lot of determination, and going back into that second half, I certainly wasn't comfortable at the end of that game. There was a try chalked off with a great tackle from Orense. That was touch and go. That could easily have been a try. And then right on the whistle, their guy ran over. Okay, we got the penalty. But it wasn't that South Africa were on their line hammering, away to try and, score again. It was Italy hammering away on our line. And I think that's what we've got to take into this game on Saturday. That game ended badly for us. It wasn't we weren't comfortable. At one point, they were within 10 points, 9-10 points. And then Marco van Staden scored his try. And, had they got back again with another try, suddenly, we've got a knife to the throat. And that's not good when you're playing at home and you're the world champions.
I just felt that the Boks looked really relieved, and that they ended the game by kicking a penalty into touch. And you would imagine that what you'd want from the Boks against Italy is a situation where they're almost chasing points at the end. You know what I'm saying? Trying to, especially at the half felt with altitude. But that's another thing. You mentioned Italy playing in the URC. A lot of those guys now. I think it was a year ago that they came close to beating Jake's Bulls team in a URC quarterfinal up there. I was in Durban in March when the Zebra very nearly beat the Sharks, which is another thing, actually, like when we were talking just now about players getting too old and players. I mean, I've been concerned about some of the guys that play for them. I mean, you mentioned Bongi earlier, and I don't mind singling him out. I'm particularly concerned about his ability to carry on until 2027. But there's other guys, Vincent Koch. I know he scored a try on Saturday, but Vincent Koch also worries me. I don't know if he's there long term either. And there are a couple of other Sharks players, if I thought about it. But you know, to go back to Italy, I think that the Sharks, actually, funnily enough, with all these Springboks, and they haven't always had the Springboks when they've played Italian teams, but they've lost twice now to Benetton in a row, to Benetton in a row, and they also lost to the Zebra last year in Parma.
Yes.
So those teams are starting to get used to beating South African teams. I know it's at a different level, but all the same, it's something that they're starting to get used to, and they know they can do.
Yeah. I think if you remember back to when did we last play Italy away? I think we had a fantastic second half. I think Mani came on, and he absolutely lit the game up with some beautiful passing, and so our forward dominance we had over them in that game, and we had the ability to get the ball into the wide spaces and give our outside backs time and space. And it'll be interesting because that is really where we fell down a bit this weekend. We were very direct and physical. We scored a try off a pushover try. We had one break close to the line. We had a set piece move off the back of the line out where Orense was exceptional to score it, but it was a strike move that worked. But in terms of sort of flowing rugby, there wasn't sort of taking it through 5 or 6 phases and using the width of the field. So with Feinberg and Gomezulu, let's have a look. If he plays collectively, when I say collectively, he doesn't have a look for himself, but has a look for the others around him, then we should be in a good situation on Saturday, providing we have a basis of a strong pack of forwards. I mean, probably you'll see Thomas du Toit getting back in there. Maybe Wilco Low will be given another start. Maybe we'll get someone like Neertland Fouché onto the bench at tight head, because we can't have a drop off in terms of our scrum performance when we take the starters off.
Yeah, I was going to say, just a prediction for you guys. Do you expect a big BOKS performance this weekend, big win for the BOKS, or do you think it's going to be the Italians are going to make us wonder a bit more by next week?
Listen, I think it's going to be. I think the BOKS it'll be a similar sort of score. I think 20 odd points to the BOKS, but they're going to have to fight their way through it. I think that there were some problems in our defence that hopefully will be shored up before this weekend, because we don't want to start conceding 3 tries to Italy. Otherwise, we're going to concede 6 against New Zealand.
Yeah, Gav?
Look, I thought, Brendan, that before the series started, I felt that there was going to be one blowout. That the BOKS haven't won one of those big, really big scores. I know France beat Italy in their last Six Nations game. I think it was 70 something. And before this last weekend, I thought that would happen in one of the games. And usually you'd expect that to happen on the half felt. It's at the half felt that the games just run away from the opposing teams in the last 20 minutes, and it didn't happen. So I'm still thinking that there might be a one-sided game, and that the BOKS. I know that Italy come with momentum. They're gonna be a lot more confident. But I remember, and Nelspruit, of course, isn't on the half felt, although it sometimes feels like it is. I remember the Argentina game last year, where we made a similar change to the one we're making. Although last year we were changing from Mani to actually Mani carried on. Sorry.
Yeah. So
I was wrong. So I'm talking about the Argentina game where Mani, everybody felt Mani lost the game because he missed the kick in Argentina, and then he cooked in that game in Nelspruit when he didn't have the kicking duties. So I'm sort of half expecting something like that Sasha's point of difference at fly half, as Nick says, though, as long as he's looking collectively, I think that the BOKS will win comfortably this weekend. I don't think it's the blowout that I was thinking before the series. I'm not thinking that they'll hit 70, but I think that I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't go into the 50s.
Yeah, I think that blowout might come against Georgia, seeing as Georgia lost quite badly against Ireland's B team this past weekend. I'm not sure by that stage that the BOKS fixed what the problems from this past weekend, if Georgia's going to be able to handle what they get in Nelspruit, but it should be interesting. Nick, I want to ask you, just while we're on this, obviously Jake's left. We mentioned Jake a bit earlier.
Yeah.
You as a coach have been in that position, the old joke that you either, any coach is either being hired or he's being fired.
Yeah.
Just your thoughts on that?
Listen, I never like talking too much about situations that I don't know much about, except to say that from what I've read, if it is true that the players did, go to the management and say, listen, they're having issues with the coach, then I know that a coach who loses the changing room, then it's time to go. You can't. Whatever happens, I don't care how many World Cups you've won or how many other competitions you've won. If it's not gelling between the coach and his assistants, and not gelling between him and the players, then it's very hard to get a performance out of the team. So, I also think that certain coaches, need short stints with teams. Are good as turnaround coaches. A Mourinho, for example, as a soccer, as opposed to Arsene Wenger or a Ferguson who can hang in there long term. Some guys who come in, hit hard. They get quick returns, but then it's quite hard to go long term with that same coach. So it always is going to happen. I mean, that a coach is never not going to have to move on. But Jake has had a hell of a career, and 3 finals that he got. Maybe in a couple of years' time, people will be saying, "Well, that wasn't such a bad performance after all."
Brendan, I reckon that, as Nick says, there are turnaround coaches, and I know that there's lots of problems at Wales that go a lot deeper than the national team. But if I was Wales, I would sort of think, Jake, come to us, because he is a very good turnaround coach. And I think the problem is that, and I'm talking about that. Nick mentioned a couple of round ball coaches there, but I always think of Eddie Jones. And I'm quite good friends with good friends. I mean, I read John Mitchell's book, and I know some other people that Eddie's been has worked with, and the stories that you always get back from there is that he is a very good coach, but he makes life very uncomfortable, and you can only live in that sort of environment for so long. So if you're with Eddie, who would bring the players back from a night, I mean the coach, his fellow coaches out after a night drinking, and at 1 o'clock in the morning, and say, guys, now we're not going to bed, we're going to go and sit and work. After a while, that does get too much for a guy. So I can completely understand that Jake is a disciplinarian. He is difficult to work with. I mean, I know that from the guys he worked with at the Sharks in 2014. He came into the Sharks in 2014 and completely changed their culture. Said to the guys, he said, "You're a professional players and professional coaches. From now on, we're working from 8 o'clock in the morning, I think it was, until 5. We're going to be at Kings Park all day." And it threw those guys. They couldn't stand it. And yet, if you speak to those guys, and I won't mention the guy's name, but there was a Shark Springbok who said to me that, I don't know if I can use this word, but he said, Jake is the biggest inserted expletive I've ever known, but he's also one of the best coaches I've known. And you can live with that for a year. And the Sharks actually did quite well in that year. They actually won the Super Rugby Shield for the first time that year. But it was just very difficult to live in that environment. And I think that's the problem with Jake. And that's why somebody like Jake is a short-term solution, is because and maybe it's not a bad thing. Maybe he drives standards. Maybe he's got his own standards that he drives. That's why people can't live with him. But that's why Jake is very much, as Nick says, a Mr. Fix-It. He is a sort of Eddie Jones. Eddie Jones probably would have turned the Stormers around in 2016 if he'd actually got to coach. But I don't think he would have ever survived in Cape Town for longer than a season or two, particularly given the environment he would have had to work in with the people he was working for in those days. But there are certain coaches who are Mr. Fix-It, and if I was Wales, I would be phoning Jake right now and say, "Come coach us."
Gavin and I spoke about that yesterday, and I agreed with him, because Wales have got so many problems at the moment, and that 18th loss in a row, and Japan beating them with a rolling ball try at the end. They're also something we didn't expect to see this weekend. But let's touch just on the other tour that's going on, is the British and Irish Lions. They edging closer to a test team, and they didn't put in a great performance against the Waratahs. I mean, I was quite surprised that they didn't have the greatest performance there, and you certainly expected them to run away, and the Waratahs just kept in, and the Waratahs didn't actually look that good either.
Kev, do you want to speak about this?
Well, they've got. Sorry, I'm sorry, Nick. I mean, they've got their test team today. I mean, they named it this morning. I don't know if you guys have seen
Yeah,
that.
the
They've got
Brumbies.
King at fullback. They've got Freeman on the wing, and they've got Lowe on the other wing, and they've got the two Irish centres. And so I think we'll see the Lions. They're playing the Brumbies on Wednesday. I think we'll start to see the Lions properly from that game. I mean, up to now it's been sort of mix and match. I do think, I don't know what Nick thinks of this, but I do think when I watch the Lions play, it's almost like they are, obviously because they've got the Ireland coach. It's almost like they're trying to play the Irish game, but they're not direct. They're not direct enough. They sort of like we're moving the ball sort of to the wings, but they're not making any headway. They're not playing direct rugby at all. And that to me is their problem. And I think that's what they've got to get right. I don't know what you think, Nick.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think it's one thing moving the ball around, but you've got to go down the field. And I think Tuipulotu, Hugh Jones they're very, very good at that. If they play together, you've got Tuipulotu has a wonderful understanding of a late pass, a late gut pass or a late pullback pass. And he'll take it right into the jaws of the defender before he does it. So he brings those defenders in tight, and then he'll play out the back. If the defender outside his defender even considers he's going to drift on that pull out the back, then he'll play his outside centre short, and that gives such a lot more punch to the way in which Ireland are playing, or the way that the Lions are playing rather, which is the Irish template. They play a lot of round the corner, flat on the gain line with options inside and outside and late passes, and then sometimes the double pull out the back to get it out wide. But you have to have in midfield, you've got to have some directness, not just directness off 9 and 10 or those two channels. You need it also in the 13 channel as well. And I think they can bring that with Tuipulotu. I think is an outstanding player. But I also think as I've said before, a lot of respect for Joe Schmidt, and I think he's going to get these guys up, and they won't have seen anything like the quality of the Australian Test team prior to this test. You can say what you like about the Brumbies, but they're not the Australian Test side who are playing in front of 80,000 people and trying to beat the British Lions, which is a 1 in 12 years effort. So. As I've said before, I know you think it's going to be Lions, but I think that Australia might turn up and win one of those tests.
They lost their fly half. They lost their fly half. Noah Lalisier.
Yes.
What's his? I can't pronounce his surname, but Lalisier. So they've lost him this weekend. I mean, how much of it? Because it's not like they've got a heck of a lot of depth in that country. I mean, how much is that going to hurt them?
No, it will, because he's backed him, hasn't he? He said he's my guy, Lalisier, and he's a sort of Marcus Smith type of player. He's not very physical, but he's takes it to the line. He gets the best out of his back line. I think you've got is it a Leinach? A Leinach is
Tom. I think it's Tom.
Tom, who's got some talent, and then you've got the old guys like Donaldson, who's a good goal kicker, can do a job of work as a structured fly half, but perhaps not the best. But Joe Smith will work around that. I think we're going to see the Australians. I know that a lot of their teams have been running the ball against the Lions a lot, but I think there's going to be quite a lot of kicking. He was a very good. When he played for Ireland, when he was coaching Ireland kicked a lot. I mean, the 38 points to 3 loss we had against him. Yeah. A lot of their tries came from very, very well-directed kicks in that game, and I think he might be doing that against the Lions.
I think they're going to play O'Connor. Are they going to? Do you think? Sorry, Ruben. They're going to play O'Connor. When you talk about old guys,
yes.
The guy who's played for Crusaders this last
year. Exactly. Yeah. He's come off the bench a lot, but he's had a lot of experience in New Zealand, and that must have done him a lot of good.
Yeah, I was going to say, they weren't that impressive against Fiji, but I mean, Fiji are that type of team that when they get their tails up, and against Australia, I think they'd probably be a bit more motivated anyway, given the geographical similarities.
Yeah, it's such a difficult one, Fiji, because if you try and play any sort of attractive rugby, you're playing into their hands. It's rather like playing against the All Blacks. you want to try. You've got to do what they don't like doing, and that's they don't like defending driving mauls. They don't like defending set pieces, and they'll tackle one-off tackles well. But if you can do a collective drive, especially a driving maul, I mean, your game against Fiji should be the tightest game you've ever played in your life. You don't ever want to give any loose ball anywhere on the field. And Australia struggle to do that because it's in their DNA to run it. So I'm not surprised that they gave them a hard time. But if the Springboks played against Fiji, it wouldn't be a close run thing. We would put 20 points, 30 points against them because they do get tired of tackling our big guys.
Yeah, no, very much. Well, listen, it's been great chatting. I think we could probably go on for hours. But Nick, thanks. We're going to let you go. We'll be back next week, and hopefully there'll be a bit more positive BOK performance to chat about, you guys.
Yeah, I look forward to it.
Thanks, Gav. We'll chat to you guys next week.
Thanks, guys. Thank Nick. Thanks
Cheers,
a lot.
Gav.
Cheers.
Thanks,
Cheers.
Cheers.
Enjoy the week.